evening and welcome to the first edition for the week of the program, The Law, the People and Governance, here on Spectrum Television. My name is Rachel David White. Alright, so this is a program that exists to bridge the gap between the people and the government, explains government policies to the people, and of course gets feedback from the people back to the government to have a smooth run. Alright, so today we'll be talking about post-elections litigations. INEC votes 3 billion naira for electoral cases. And we'll be joined virtually by Dr. Ademola Bayanle, all the way from US. He's going to talk to us about this issue. He is a Guber candidate of Osun 2022 polls. Well, as with all elections, the 2023 general elections will come and go, or had come and gone actually, but as it obtained in the aftermath of wars where massive destruction of cities and properties have long-lasting effects, some of the outcomes of this year's elections might finally be determined by the court. Well, while some outcomes might be overturned by the courts, others would be upheld, and these developments are expected to have some effect on the nation's socio-economic landscape in the long run. Already, shortly after the February 25th, 2023 presidential elections that produced candidates of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Bola Ahmed Tinubu as winner, two of the major contestants in the election, Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party and Labour Party's Peter Obi, have since rejected the result as announced by Independent National Electoral Commission INEC, with each of them laying claim to winning the elections and vowing to challenge the exercise in court. Also, you would recall that INEC had in the early hours of March 1st, 2023 declared Tinubu as the winner of the elections. Tinubu defeated 17 other candidates who took part in the elections. The APC candidate polled 8,794,726 votes and won in 12 states to defeat his closest rival, who was Atiku, who scored 6,984,520 votes. Obi, who polled 6,101,523, and of course Rabiu Kwankwaso of the New Nigerian People's Party, that's the NNPP, polled 1,496,687 votes. Now, the election is said to be the most competitive since the country's return to democratic rule in 1999. And Atiku and Peter Obi's decision to challenge the outcome in court on the grounds that the presidential election was marred by irregularities is arguably the first of the 2023 general election matters presented before the nation's judiciary, but it won't be the last. Now, some aggrieved candidates who partook in the National Assembly elections are also expected to toe the legal path. Well, in addition to this, the March 18 governorship and state houses of assembly election is expected to produce many aggrieved candidates and parties who will also approach the court to contest the outcome of the polls and seek legal remedies. Already we had the likes of the YPP candidate and the person of Oba here in Akwa Ibom State hope to challenge the court for the governorship result. Labour Party legal team meeting INEC chairman Mahmoud Yakubu at INEC headquarters in Abuja went as thus, okay? He said, in all of this, INEC, the electoral body which oversees elections in Nigeria, is always listed as a party in lawsuit instituted by those who feel cheated in the process. But nevertheless, for many stakeholders, there are cost implications when political parties and politicians engage in endless court battles over compromised primaries and, of course, major elections. It would also be recalled that after, the 2015 elections, INEC chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu disclosed that the commission was taken to court 680 times by litigants over the 2015 elections. He explained that of the 680 court cases, 600 were dismissed while 80 were upheld. Similarly, litigations after the 2019 elections were higher. About 1,689 court cases arose from the conduct of the 2019 general elections, according to INEC, while more than 890 of the cases were pre-election matters from conduct of political party primaries elections. 799 were election petitions that went to various tribunals across the country. So for the 2023 elections, many Nigerians were shocked when on July 21st, 2022, Yakubu announced that there were 334 post-primary cases in various courts across the country, and that political parties held their primaries between April and June 2022. Now, about 7 months later, Yakubu, while playing host to the delegation of the Nigerian Bar Association led by President Yakubu Michael at the Commission's headquarters in Abuja, declared that as at February 6, the Commission had been joined in 1,241 intra-party lawsuits in different courts of law. He said some of the cases have gone to the Federal High Court, while some are before the Court of Appeal and others are before the Supreme Court. And according to him, on pre-election litigation alone, as at Monday, February 6th, INEC had been joined in 124,000, of course, over cases, making them one of the most litigated against agencies in the country. And he said a whole lot of things. Now, this alone had made them come out to say that INEC had already voted 3 billion naira, a huge sum of money, of course, for, post-election litigation cases. So they would be able to handle those issues in court. Now, one will have lots and lots and lots of questions to ask concerning this. Let's get over to our guest so we can find out much about this. Welcome, Dr. Bayanle.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's nice to have me again. Thank you.
All right, sir. It's good to have you once again. This is my first time talking to you after the elections. Let me just ask you a brief one. You are in a position of an observer. That's because you are away from Nigeria. So I put you in that position as an observer. So how do you rate the whole process? Both the presidential, I know we've talked about the presidential before, but just both the presidential and the Guba elections, how do you rate it? And of course, how do you rate INEC's performance once again?
Well, thank you so much. Maybe I will take that appellation as an observer, but I've actually been very active on ground. Just leaving the Osun State election, I also had to rest a little bit. But I've been following keenly, also because of my party's participation in the election. I have definitely been observing and participating, even from afar. The election has really not been terrible. I would say that it's an upgrade probably from the 2019 election. We're moving. Little by little, we're fine tuning the process of choosing our leaders. Of course, we have so many things that we can do better. We think INEC has given us the barest minimum. A lot of expectations from different umpires, our security apparatuses. I think that they also did not give us their best in this election. We had so many snatching of ballot box, disenfranchisement, security lapses here and there. So, it's been marred by different irregularities that by now it should not be so. But I think with the outcome of the result, is the first time in the history of Nigerian election that we are having about a winner win by about 8 million votes. We've seen people lose elections with even 15 million in the past. Our history has been 25 million, 24 million. Now we are having people make the call with just 8 million votes. So I think this is a right direction. Beavers, everybody have said Beavers worked. Maybe we might have a little bit of lapses around the electronic transmission of results, etc. We also saw a lot of participation. People, youths, young people, middle-aged, old people really came out to vote for the presidential election. So we saw people, clinch offices, Labour Party people in Lagos, in Anambra, everybody, House of Representative members that would otherwise not be so. We saw, for instance, the Katsina, even the presidential presidency lost in states. Look at Plateau, Lalong lost.
Yeah.
Lagos. There's so many things that show that we are progressing. Maybe we are not where we're supposed to be, but it's not really terrible.
Okay, so you would say this just the just concluded elections where we saw something different. We saw the emergence of Labour Party, come out strong, like something we've never had before. Yeah, we've had other parties, but not as strong as Labour Party. And then we saw some people, some big wigs, lose the elections in their own states and in their own
Exactly.
units. Okay, well. Of course, you remember that INEC was given over 300 billion naira to, fund the election, the whole process. Now, would you say the money was well utilized?
I'm not part of the accounting situation of INEC. Maybe they will have to, I don't know the internal audit process, but if you have to actually man 176,000 plus polling units with ad hoc staffs, with campaign materials, with situation rooms, these things cost money sincerely. And I do not think that when the House, the chambers, the red and the green chambers, was approving this budget, I don't think that it was just a rubber stamp. I'm sure they looked through and through the budget and probably came up with a realistic numbers on how much they should have. So I think it's probably not that terrible of a budget. Nigeria is a big state, 36 states plus FCT and so many other things in between. Logistics are also not cheap. If you're budgeting for a candidate, just a governorship candidate to spend 5 billion, now think about that: 5 billion in 36 states, and now it's presidency. It's a lot of work. So now we are even talking about presidency, which is on a separate day from the governorship
Yeah.
election. So things cost money. Rachel, I won't really think that much about that money. I
Okay.
think it's fair. Yeah.
Okay. Well, lots of irregularities, witnessed in the elections were blamed on INEC's poor preparations. Did you envisage that, with the money they had gotten for these elections, these issues would be there? I know you've talked about the money, yeah, with the number of polling units we had, and of course, the whole lot of things, logistics they had to put in place. Do you think that, they had prepared well? Or do you agree to the session that they did not prepare well, that it was due to poor preparations?
I think there's definitely room for improvement. Everybody should be able to grow. I feel that what they gave us for this election is just a little bit above average. I do not think they absolutely prepared enough.
Okay.
And I think that we've also seen a lot of cracks within their ranks. I was on a space yesterday talking about what happens in some of these grassroots. We have seen ad hoc staffs unable to move sensitive materials from the local government headquarters to the polling unit. People were actually assisting some of their adult staff in the movement of their materials. We saw a lot of places they could not even print polling unit tags. We saw a lot of places they could not print collation agent tags. We saw a lot of places that there was just a lot of lapses here and there, which should actually not be the case. But that's why I'm going to give them an average. But you see, there's room for improvement. I hope they can take the lessons away from this election. I actually thought that elections like Anambra, Ekiti, or Shun State, they were out of the cycle, will have given us a lot of experience and given them a lot of experience
Yeah.
about the expectation of the presidential election. But you see, I do not think that they gave us their best in this election. And
Wow.
I'm looking forward to a more improved agency in the next couple of years.
Okay, well, INEC now says it requires, as much as 3 billion naira to handle post-election court cases. Maybe something that would have been avoided. Well, but this is asking for taxpayers' money to defend its seemingly poor handling of the elections that the taxpayers themselves have described as horrible. What's your reactions to this?
Well, when we move from military to democracy, democracy comes with its own baggage.
Mm,
This is democracy that we have to is a competition. So there's possibility that people are not satisfied at different points. So this is some of the baggage of democracy, and I don't even think there's any election that we have had that has never been litigated in Nigeria. We've
of
seen people
course.
demonstrated, we've seen people go to the court, and we've actually seen people win at court. So it's kind of like the last hope
The common
for
man.
elect for the common man, but it's not. At 3 billion, think about they have to employ a lot of sand, a lot of lawyers, do a lot of work.
Mm,
I mean, in a country of a budget of about 11 trillion, 3 billion on litigation. Yes, we might say we don't have that money. I don't think Nigeria is poor either way, but it's comparable. It's kind of like you can put it side by side and know that okay, it's not really too bogus.
okay.
But again, we should be seeing these numbers go down. If their process is streamlined and is more efficient, I think people will start accepting the results of elections. Definitely. So if they come to us we should see these numbers of litigations still in the future. I
Okay.
think the numbers you reeled out about thousands of people going into to court, etc. I think a lot of them could be preventable, would have been prevented if we had a better system in place with INEC, even security. There are definitely criteria to cancel election. We've seen a lot of places that there were chaoses on the polling unit, and it was not cancelled. I'm sure with all the collations and everything that should have gone on, that should have happened during also the electioneering processes, we're still seeing cases of overvoting. Look at our Osun State election, for instance.
Mm,
The case was overturned just based on the basis of overvoting, and it was cancelled. Which should not be so. I mean, all those things should have been caught at the level of the polling unit or the collation center. So there's
mm.
still some lapses in the processes, and we're hoping that all these things will be cleaned up so that we all don't have Supreme Courts, governors, and presidents, etc.
All right, thank you so much. Well, back to the people. This is just to remind you that you can be a part of a conversation by calling the number displayed on your TV screen. You can send us a WhatsApp or a text message. We're talking about, the post-election litigation cases where INEC is requesting 3 billion naira for election litigation cases in court, actually. So, back to our guest, Dr. Ademola Bayanle. Welcome once again.
Thank you so much.
All right, so INEC had already claimed it was, dealing with over 60 litigations surrounding political parties and their primaries before the elections. Do you sympathize with them that, they have post-election cases to deal with, or would you say they have gotten what they deserved, considering the fact that some people had the assertion that Professor Mahmoud Yakubu's late administration has really been the worst administration in the history of Nigeria, where election was highly rigged. And of course, he should have stood down or been sacked or just resigned.
I do not sympathize with them sincerely. I feel that there's a lot of things that should have been caught, yeah, a lot of irregularities. I also do not think that INEC they bring in their best foot when it comes to choosing candidates, even from the times of
Mm,
primaries, taking time to vet the documents of candidates, taking time to make sure that the process of even choosing our candidate is valid, etc. And I think that if they take some of their time at some of these front end processes, right now we won't have somebody even going as far back as saying that some of these candidates should not even be the flag bearers of their party. I think these are some of the low hanging fruit that INEC should have caught and not waste a lot of people's time, waste money, waste all the resources trying to post election now clarify some of those things.
mm,
If a vice president, for instance, one of the cases the Labour Party is bringing against the APC candidates is that Kashim Shettima, the vice presidential candidate of the APC, should not be the candidate or the running mate just because he was also a senatorial candidate at that time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think even while they are putting in the documents, while they are doing their due diligence before the election, INEC should have flagged some of those things. We shouldn't be left to the court to decide if somebody is a valid candidate or not a valid candidate. I have gone through that process before. I see a little bit of weakness in the part of INEC because you just submit all your documents. You do an affidavit, you swear an oath, you submit the document. I don't think there's any background check that goes on to it.
Okay.
I don't think there's any
just
extra
a moment.
steps that
I'm
goes
sorry
on.
to break you. Let's take a call. Okay. All right. Hello. Good evening and welcome to the show. Good evening and welcome to the show. Tell us your name and where you're calling from. Okay, so we lost that call. Sorry to cut you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so like I said, I think some INEC needs to be proactive.
Okay.
Sometimes even from the choice of candidates, going through the primaries of different political parties, doing their due diligence in vetting the candidacy of some of these candidates, and making sure that all the process that leads to election is clear and is fair. If we can clean that up, then we will know that maybe pre-election matters, day of elections, etc., or campaign issues is what we're going to be talking about post-election. Not go as far back as talking about saying that some candidates are actually not eligible to
Yeah.
contest. So they can do better, like I've said. There's room for improvement, and I hope that we can see some of the. I mean, there's a lot of cases in court right now. I hope that they will learn from this process, and by the time we're coming back again in 2027 or 2028 for another cycle, we will have seen some of that improvement in it.
Okay, well, talking about, choices of candidates. Is this candidate qualified enough to be the flag bearer of a party? Now, let's just go a little bit into that. Starting from the presidential candidates, of course, we had lots of issues. We had lots of cases, brought by different people, different parties, different persons and organizations against the All Progressives Congress candidate, which emerged as the winner, the president-elect of the just concluded presidential polls. Now, on whose part is it to make sure that they vet each candidate properly before primaries?
I think it's on the part of one, the party. I mean, the political party.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the first place you show your intention to run is your political party. So your political party, you are a flag. You want to be the flag bearer of your political party. So I think the ball should start, or the process should start at the table of the political party. Political parties should make sure that the candidates they are bringing forward have met all the criteria to run for any elective office in the country. I mean, the age criteria, the constitutionally required criteria to run. Once we have that process fine-tuned and cleaned out, it's going to be less hurdle or less work on the basis of INEC. Of course, the next stage is INEC. Now, on the basis of, on the side of the INEC, what you have to do is to make sure that the affidavits and all the forms that we're submitting are all valid. They are all they meet all the criteria. If we also clean that up, if the INEC is doing their due diligence and making sure that candidates are not just thrown to them, then I think we'll reduce some of these issues. There are processes from when you aspire to when you become the candidate. Then the primaries of each elector, each political party, where people come together to run for the primaries of their political party, that is another place where a lot of people have argument and disagree that the process of choosing candidates are not clean and clear. So again, INEC is back with the constitution. INEC is supposed to be an observer at those processes. But you see, things slip out the door during that process again, which continues to lead to different contentions along the process. So there's a lot of stop gaps, like I said, on the part of the party that needs to make sure the candidates meet all the criteria. On the side of INEC, that the parties also. I think we should also include our security agencies too, because sometimes some of these people have criminal cases, and one of the criteria is that you cannot have a criminal case. You cannot be a convict. So if you're not be a
Exactly. That's why I asked that question. You know, it seems that the process in which Nigeria chooses or political parties chooses the flag bearers is not just a fair process, because are they not supposed to, you know, run investigations once an allegation is being made, and then if the candidate which the party produces is not credible enough, it should stand down?
Exactly. That's how it should be. But we all know that Nigeria and the peculiarities of it. But I'm glad that I think we're getting a little bit better in some of these processes, sincerely. But by continuing to talk about some of these things, our security agencies should be fully involved in even vetting our candidates. I think they should introduce a certificate, a security clearance before you can actually be put forward as a candidate of your party. Because if you clean up that back end processes, then we know that what's going to happen is the campaign itself. The campaign, we're left with the campaign and the election day issues. So that literally reduced or cut into almost half of the issues right there. So we need to continue to have this conversation, Rachel. There's a lot of improvement I see that we still need to do. We're participating year in, year out. Yes, I think INEC has improved from 2019 to 2023, but again, we're not even close to where we should be. There's so many lapses in our system. There's so many corruptions down the ranks of a lot of these agencies and federal executive bodies that just make us look very ridiculous. And again, 3 billion naira that should have been used for some infrastructural development. Now we're pouring it into litigations. We're pouring it into different things that could have been avoided. Yes, lawyers also have bills to pay. They also need to make money at this. This is their season, like everybody have said. But I mean, it should not be at the detriment of taxpayers.
Okay. All right. This is just to remind the people again. We're sorry if we missed your calls while we were talking. Please put the calls across to us. We're ready to attend to your comments or contributions via text message, a WhatsApp message, or a call. The phone number is displayed on your TV screen. And of course, we're talking about INEC's request of 3 billion naira to attend to election litigation cases. And we are being joined virtually by Dr. Ademola Bayale, all the way from US, and we're just taking a look at you know, the conduct of elections generally, and of course the performances of INEC. Well, do you equally consider this to mean that you know, just like the cost of governance in Nigeria, the electoral process is also too expensive? I mean, the money pumped into elections, you know, to produce leaders should be able to give Nigeria credible leaders.
Absolutely. I don't think we're in short of resources. I don't think resources is our problem. Uh, the money pumped in definitely should be able to give us credible leaders. But again, money is just money. It depends on what you do with it. It's the process that is in question at this point. Right from the beavers machine to the sensitive materials to the logistics of the polling unit agent to collations and announcement of results. That's a whole spectrum that needs to be fine tuned. And if I think if money is also spent in the right way, I don't think there should be an issue there. Our I think Constitution and Electoral Act money should have been released to INEC, I think a year before election, I think which was done. I know the new Electoral Act was signed late February 2022.
You know, Doctor,
And
we don't want to go through the Electoral Act because, I mean, from the conduct of the elections and everything, all the irregularities, all the things that we saw in the just concluded, both the presidential and even the, you know, the Guba elections, would see that INEC is failed to follow the electoral guidelines. So, if electoral processes were, according to the guidelines, the guidelines were being followed, I don't think we'd have some of these cases we have today.
Well, not absolutely. You see, I want to say this. You see, our political parties are also complicit in these issues. You see, we do not have a lot of players coming to the game with clean hands. And that is one thing that we also need to be aware of. Uh, INEC is not the one in charge of the security on election day. A lot of political parties disenfranchise themselves or people just for their own gains. There's a lot of vote buying. INEC will probably not do anything about vote buying. They're not involved in curtailing vote buying. So those are the issues. There's a lot of underage voting. Of course, once somebody, if you have your voter's card and you're validated, INEC is not going to be thinking, oh, you look small, whatever. The criteria to vote is just you're validated and you have your name on the electoral on the list. So there's a whole lot of issues too that these parties continue to play and unfairly. So it's an issue, and I do not know what we need to do. I think that maybe parties need to be called to order. That this nature of politicking, they need to change it, because yes, we can be trying to improve the process, but there has to be penalties. You see, if one political party has been deregistered because of irregularities, a lot of other political parties might take the cue from that. A lot of all these parties do not mean well for Nigeria, and it is hard that that burden rests a lot on INEC, which we keep saying let us improve the process, which is kind of like a secondary prevention. You see, we need to sometimes go back to primary prevention and say political parties. You see, you have to call yourself to order. Enough of filing or enough of presenting candidates that are not that does not qualify. Enough of this vote buying. Enough of disenfranchisement. Enough of causing chaos on election day. And if you do this and do that, there should be penalties, even against these political parties. I think some parties need to be cancelled so that we can reduce some of the burden on INEC, because all our eyes right now is on INEC. They have to shoulder all these problems of these political parties that come to the game with ulterior motives. So let us share the blame equally and say and tell ourselves where the problems are actually coming from. Have you ever heard that APC was penalized for some of the conduct they had? Have you ever heard that PDP was penalized, or YPP or any political party? You see,
Doctor, talking about that, in the just concluded governorship election, especially in Lagos State, we had, lots of irregularities, lots of present of thuggery, voter suppression, and a whole lot of that. And then we even saw, videos, footages where APC branded cars were all around terrorizing other parties against, from voting for parties of their choices. And up till this moment, we haven't had such issues addressed. And this is the same election that produced Sanwo-Olu as the governor of Lagos State, put him back on sit. So it looks like at some point that maybe security, the security aspect is joined with the party aspect. Now, let me explain. Some people would say it looks like the security in Nigeria or security agencies have been compromised by some of the political parties, maybe political parties in power.
Absolutely. The party in power, for instance, in the case of Lagos, Sanwo-Olu is the chief security officer of that state. Though they might always tell us that they are not in charge of policing and whatever, but they still have the constitutional right to tell the security agencies what to do. And of course, we have seen it over and over where they use some of this power to disenfranchise people. I always say it, and I probably have said it on this program before, that the military or these police officers, they are regimented people. They listen to orders. If you see a policeman or a military officer somewhere, he is there by the order of somebody. He did not just wake up, leave his post to show up anywhere. They do not do that. So we have to know who is giving these orders. And if you trace it back, it might be either be their commanders or the chief security officer of the state. If you're coming, if you're not the incumbent governor or president, you do not have those powers. So we need to also penalize. I think it happened in the case of Ekiti in 2019 or 2018, thereabout, that we saw a lot of military officers and police etc. Get involved in the electionary process, and I think some of them were actually dismissed. And that needs to continue. That pattern needs to continue. We literally saw policemen come tear ballot papers. We saw policemen carry away or cut away what's it called, voting those voting bins containers. So we need maybe it has to be put into our constitution that during 6 months of campaign and on election day, maybe we have to strip up some of these governors or presidents of their immunity when they're campaigning, so that they are also citizens like everybody. They do not hide under some of this immunity to carry out some of these actions. Anything that happens during, yes, and maybe they also need to pass on their duties probably to the deputy or to the speaker of the house or something while they are campaigning, because we have seen them use this power over and over and nothing happens to them. So if it's a level playing field for everybody, maybe everybody will be cautious and will not engage in some of these activities.
You know, Doctor, if we're supposed to make that right, then we have to start from the point where sitting governors and presidents are not even allowed to have candidates of their choices.
Well, that would be difficult, because there are internal party arrangements when it comes to flag bearers of party.
But we hardly have a sitting government produce a candidate and the candidate fails.
True, because again, they use the machinery of the government
and the power of incumbency.
But it's kind of like a catch. It's difficult. It's going to be difficult because the people that win, when you win an election, is the party. It's not the person. Do you understand? The party is the one on the ballot box, and when you are either the president or the governor, you are automatically the leader of that party. So you control a lot of what happens in the party. Also, as a governor or as a president, you are interested in continuing your legacy. You don't want to let everything you have worked for or everything you're doing just go down the drain. So the interest is there, obviously. The interest is there. It's difficult to separate that. But I think there's also a way we can fine tune it so that there's no, we do not have the incumbent power or whatever really show. Look, and I'll give you an example, for instance. INEC does not take seriously campaign funding. INEC does not, we say for governorship, it should not be more than 5 billion. And in fact, you should be able to tender your expenses and your source of donations and everything to INEC. That is how it should be. So that we can see, is this money coming from the coffers of the government, or is it coming from private donors, or is it coming? That's how things should be done. They say, he who pays the piper controls the tune, right? So if the incumbent is using the money of the state to fund an election, you should know that he's interested in that election, and that shouldn't be the case. So INEC, again, that's also rests on the shoulders of INEC, and I wish that we get to a point in our democracy where everything is so streamlined and so transparent that you can run for office and be sure of victory just based on your capacity, your antecedents, and what you can put into campaigning.
Okay, well, one last question. INEC official was, arrested 3 days after the election with 14 beavers, which was used to rig the election. Now, would you say that electoral process was free, fair, and credible, and also link it to other elections like the likes of Lagos State, where we had some of the top big wigs in Lagos come out to say the elections were free and fair. We even had some of the electoral, the international observing body, come out to say the elections in Lagos State was free and fair, despite what we saw. We also had the another one, like the European Union, come out to say the whole conduct was a mess.
The truth of the matter is that the last election was largely not free and largely not fair. And what does that mean? There are places that people came out, voted, and went back. Their vote counted, their vote was transmitted, and everything went very smoothly. There are places that people came out and they were not even allowed to get to the polling units because of thugs and issues around their environment. There are places that people voted and their result was mutilated, or what they voted that was in the result sheet was not the one on the IRF.
Yeah.
So it was mad with so many irregularities, clearly, that you cannot say in one brush that yes, this is a free and fair election. I will not use that word. That it is definitely we have a lot of irregularities there, and like I said, we are learning, and there's a room for huge improvement across all the stakeholders involved in this politicking, from the party themselves to INEC themselves to police to everybody, to even the voters. There's a way. Look at NNPP in Kano, for instance. They had to. I heard that they were at the polling unit from the day of election, all throughout that day,
Yeah.
in masses. They followed their results to the collation center. They
They
slept
guarded their
there.
votes.
They protected everything with all what they had.
Yeah.
So I mean, we also have responsibilities as voters, but it shouldn't be that hard, if
That
the
that
process
that,
is
com-
not.
that comes from a process where there is lots of irregularities, and the umpire is not even trusted to give us a credible process.
Absolutely. How can you have an INEC official with 12 beavers machine?
And now,
Again,
okay.
there's a lot of unpacking there. Is he taking the beavers machine to a polling unit? Is he what was he doing with the beavers machine? Is he actually truly an INEC official? We're in Nigeria, so we cannot just say that that is true and true. But if that is true, that it was found with beavers machine and it is in a very compromising situation, then you see, I have seen it even before the day of election. Like I said, even from giving voters card out, a lot of INEC officials on ground were even looking. They will look at you and check what party you're from before they give you voters card. So it was all messed up from the beginning. But it's a big process that I think that INEC needs to really hold their staffs together, really have to instill some discipline into their ranks, and make sure that even up to the ad hoc staffs at the polling units, they are following to the letter. A lot of ad hoc staff don't even know what to do.
Of
I saw a
course.
video where they were like, "Oh, we are not going to snap the result sheet. We don't have." Some people say they do not have the password, or they forgot the password. There's so many irregularities there. So I'm
Okay.
hoping that INEC will train and retrain, and make sure that there's discipline across their rank, because again, all eyes on them. They are umpires right now. The fate of the leadership of Nigeria rests on their shoulders, and I hope that they start cleaning up their system and their ranks.
Okay, just in 1 minute now, the electoral process is over. Now we're hoping on the courts to get something better, right? To get justice, a fair judgment. With the assertion that INEC had been compromised, the security agencies may have been compromised. What are the chances that, of course, the courts, which we know that election rigging these days are mostly done in courts, will not be compromised, will give us a free and fair judgment?
You see, we have to keep our hopes high. Peter Obi, for instance, of the Labour Party, has been a beneficiary of the court system before. In 2003, when he lost election, I think to Chris Ngige for at the Anambra election. But about 2 years later, it took 2 years to overturn that judgment to give him to actually bring him back as the governor of Anambra State. Even after that, even the his own House of Assembly also removed him as the governor. 6 months later, he was reinstated also by the court. Also, again, he didn't participate in the gubernatorial election because he thought that he has actually not been governor enough for like the 4 years. Despite the fact that there was election in his state, he went to court. He won the election again. He won the appeal again. So he has been a beneficiary of the judiciary system,
Okay, so
and we should not.
we can stay positive, right?
Yeah, so we cannot cast aspersion.
Okay.
We can't say it is all good when it's benefiting us, but it is all bad when it's not benefiting us.
Okay.
So if he has been a beneficiary of that judiciary system, we should fold our hands and also wait for the same system to prove to us if indeed he was the winner, or if who is actually the winner of that election.
Okay.
So don't let us cast too many aspersion or have prejudice about the outcome of the election. Let's hope for the best.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ademola Bayanle, calling us all the way from US. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
All
and
right.
I wish the candidate of Akwa Ibom also all the best.
Thank you.
With the litigation process.
Oh, thank you so much.
You know my party.
Of course, I know your guy. All right, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. We're sorry we couldn't take your calls. Well, the program still continues tomorrow until Thursday, so keep it there with us. Let's talk politics. Well, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. My name is Rachel David White. Good evening.